in this episode of At the Stark's Table, it's another moment where we're revealing personal information, this time how we navigate our parents as adults. So join us for this episode of Managing Mum and Dad. Well, on this episode of At the Stark's Table, we are just keeping those cameras rolling, my friends. And as you will remember from our previous episode, we were talking about raising adults, raising teenagers. And now we are, with some degree of trepidation, going to step into the waters of, rather than downward there to the raising of the littles, the upward to the, oh my, I'm navigating a parent. That is not always so easy. So let me start off with a top tip. When I'm doing marriage preparation, and actually, to be fair, it's usually after they're married, because there's some things at marriage preparation you just think it's too much. We've already had your sexual history. We've already agreed, what you will and won't say to each other. We've already done what you love about each other, and sometimes it's just emotionally too much. And it's usually after marriage that I will start to say to them, let's talk about your traditions. That you have permission to create your own nuclear family traditions. And I actually think, and I'm going to look straight at the camera, there has to be permission given. I'm giving you permission to say, actually, this nuclear family needs to set its rhythm of its own traditions. What does a birthday look like for you? What does a Mother's Day, a Father's Day, a Christmas and Easter look like for you? And you are empowered, because those are usually the crunch points, to sit down together and say, whether you're single or you're married at that point, what do I want this to look like? That either it was wrong in my childhood, or actually I don't need the stress of still honouring your traditions, but that I want to now be very mindful of what are our traditions. And I think that's really important, that as you begin a life together, or even if you've got this horribly wrong and you're mixed up in all the wrong ways with your parents' generation and what they want and their dictation, that you are empowered to say, I would love a birthday to look like this. I would love a Christmas to look like this. And actually you then frame your own traditions. So let's jump in and unpack. That's our starter for 10. Let's jump in and unpack the best things we have learned about how we navigate life with parents of different levels of lovingness. Actually, even just different culture and different generations bring a different culture. So let's move into top tips. We're done, because they're all still alive, most of our parents.
I really struggle.
Oh no!
I just know. You guys go first.
I will never do a birthday like this.
It's like I never want to do a birthday this way. My mother just does this really weird thing. No, she asks us our favorite moments of the year, and it's just exhausting.
Yeah, no, I do, but yes. Okay, actually, I have a dad still alive, but not a mum. You're the reverse. You have a mum still alive, but not a dad. So we have two that have exited this mortal coil.
A mum and a dad, and still a grandma.
Oh.
Both of us have our parents, and I have a grandmother.
You still have two parents on the planet?
But they're divorced.
They're divorced?
I have two parents still married.
And on the planet?
And grandparents.
Yeah, you have three grandparents still.
Just lost my great-grandparents, but for most of my life I've had those as well.
Yes. So this is our live navigation. Okay. Who's going to kick us off with top tips?
Well, I think that it's really good to be aware that, considering they are our parents, that they hold the most trigger points for our trauma. So
Oh, bless them. They do. But it's true.
So, like,
does that not bother you that you're going to hold the most trigger points for
really
your
does.
daughter?
We talk about this
especially
all
as
the
an
time.
Emmanuel coach, I'm like, Jesus, what have I done to her? Like, how can we undo it quick?
Yes.
So much in you.
So it's a little bit unfortunate because, depending on the specifics of your childhood and your parents, it can be quite traumatic. Like, so for me, for example, my mum had she had a hemorrhage when I was born. I was then shipped around to different aunties for the first few weeks of my life. She then had severe postnatal depression, and so there was a lack of connection right from the word go that is neither her fault nor my fault.
Yes.
And so a lot of times when I am feeling a certain way towards her, I'm now as an adult, thanks to Deb, just so aware that actually her behaviour is not anything, and neither is mine, but I am so triggered by the trauma of my childhood. And so one of the things that has really helped me in the past few years is just being aware of that and thinking in a situation when my emotions are for some reason going through the absolute roof and I can't quite understand why. It's okay, I'm just really triggered and it's not her fault and it's not mine. And that's really helped me to hold that whole relationship just a little bit healthier and to navigate it like a little bit better.
Interesting. Debs.
Yeah, and I think there's a dynamic to multi-generation families as well about what is the role of that particular generation. And so I'm aware, we could be grandparents in this next decade. Just saying.
I'm almost expecting to, but
hopefully.
But your eldest has a boyfriend. My eldest does not have a boyfriend,
No.
so I mean,
She does, and
we'll get it sorted.
but that
So we'll still be a grandchild.
in the next 10 years, Jess.
in the right order. In the right order.
But there's a transition there. So I can see with my parents and with my husband's parents, that even the young getting married and us moving to now having adult children of our own, as those generations move one higher, there has to be a lot of adjustment for every generation. And so my part as a grandparent, I will have a journey from being the parent and doing Christmas and doing birthdays, and because I will be the grandparent, and our children will be then inviting us to
their traditions.
To their traditions.
And
I think it's holding that and holding it lightly. And I think a lot of the challenges have come in families where it feels like boundaries are being overstepped when actually there's a lack of retiring from that phase that hasn't happened. And they remain in that position when each generation has to pull rank a bit and give the next one their place.
And my grandparents, a granny looks very different to the grandchild than it does to a mother or a father. It just is completely different roles and how they react with each other. And I think for us, we don't have partners, so we don't have that sort of new family tradition that we've come together to be like, let's create. But we're on the journey of starting our own, you longer than me, in starting our own traditions away from home of, okay, what does birthdays look like? How many do I want to spend at home? How many do I want to do away? And who are my friends? Who are my core? Who are my mentors that I now want to spend my birthdays with or significant celebrations with? That I love my family, and and for those that struggle with those kind of relationships, who is your core then outside of the family home that is actually a good network of people that will celebrate you and you be able to celebrate them and create traditions together in that in-between stage. And I just think that has been the most vital and key thing in that kind of transition between creating your new, with your covenant, your partner, and a new, completely new family, in between that transition stage when you now need to decide how much am I staying at home, how much am I creating my own traditions out with the home, living in different, say I've got my whole different lifestyle, And when I come back, it's just completely different. I need to reintegrate into the laundry routine here that I didn't, you know, is someone cooking dinner tonight or am I going to do it? Like all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But even just making sure that when I am away from home, my core people around me are people that will celebrate me like a family does, or have communication and conversation that I want, or, you know, if I didn't get, you know, if you didn't get the sort of stuff that you wanted at home, can you find that in Friends Out with, you know, your family life environment? And is there something they can bring to the table?
Let me give some top tips around dysfunctional adult to adult parent-child relationships. I think those relationships can often feel like you're in a boxing ring. I think you can spend your life within the confines of a continual fight. And they don't sometimes end till, unfortunately, till the person dies. And there are moments in that continual boxing ring place that you are happily in your own corners, but still armed for war. Then there are times when you are literally, you know, you really are punching each other and you feel the pain of that. Oh, that's the person who's supposed to be the most for me in the world. And here we are, and we're slogging it out with words and actions. Then I think sometimes there is embrace, but the embrace sometimes never has the boxing gloves off. So it's the sweaty, unfortunate embrace that boxers have when they drape over each other in the boxing ring, you know, and it's just that sense that there are relationships that are draining like that. And so my comment in all of those is to acknowledge that they exist. And I think most of us will have felt at some point with different parents that I am in a boxing ring. Some of you will be fortunate enough to live outside of the boxing ring, but there are some parent-child relationships that never get out of the boxing ring. They just don't. And so you are navigating always a crisis, and you are navigating always, how are we going to have this stressful conversation, and are we going to them for Christmas or are we not? And it is so emotionally demanding. Now, my comment in all of this is, can we go to scripture? Probably about time, Emma. And we're in the 10 Commandments. And where God is saying in that chapter in Exodus, honor your father and mother, and it will go well with you in the land. And you're going, oh no, you're horrible as a parent. We continually have our boxing gloves on. And God, you're saying that I'm only going to live long if I honor. That actually you might curtail my life and take me to an early grave if I step outside of honor. How am I supposed to process that when they are in this ring with me the whole time? And we understand that. My comment in that is this. Honor is not proximity. Honor is not the same as proximity. And we have learned this in helping a lot of people out over the years. That sometimes to get yourself into the place where you can honor them, you have got to move geographically or move emotionally or move proximity, however that looks, be it emotionally or physically, so that you can honor. And honor often comes the best in distance.
Forgive me if I'm wrong, but is that then, or correct me, but is that, you know, I would also say that respect and honor are also very different. You know, I honor you with the role that you have in my life and the role that God has placed you in as my parent and as my guardian. But I don't necessarily respect some of the choices you've made. And I take a step back. But I still honour you as the role that you have in His God-given.
And I think what that acknowledges is that there are some times where one half of that parent-child, of course we're all talking adults here, will just not deal with personal healing issues. And to be fair, sometimes there's significant abuse that you will limp with all your days.
That's right.
And that you never disclose to your child, even though that child might be 40, 50, 60 years old. and therefore it's not understood why you behave as you behave. But there's a different generation that didn't know to go for deeper healing. I would acknowledge that. And that actually, if I want to be an honouring child, which I do because that's scripture, I've got to then look at my emotional, physical proximity. So how do I, as you're right, I might not necessarily respect all that you do, but I will say honourable things, but I will go to the place so that my heart can do that. Sometimes that's healthy distance.
Because I think we get caught up as well in thinking it will change or we can change it.
Yes.
And this is, you know, we've had conversations with people where it's that will likely never change. And you have to be okay with it never changing. Therefore, stop giving it the power. Stop feeding it, which is letting it affect you. Because that actually puts you in a place of dishonour when you are letting it, because you become responsive in a negative way too. So it's actually, like you say, you honour by coming out of that position of dishonour, which is, I'm no longer going to let it steal my days.
Yes.
And that can sound big, and it is, but actually, you know, you have a life, you have a family, you have your own children, and you have a responsibility to the things you do. God has not given you that responsibility. And so you have to remove yourself from it and say, it won't rob from me, and it won't have power over me. And that's the advice we give, just that with honour, it will not affect me because I am laying it down.
And in that place, I think I would ask that people come to a place of gratitude. Because sometimes you can live just too much in the middle of the ring, but you get into a pattern of just punching each other the whole time. And there, because there's so many like high days and holidays in a year, it's another punch at a Mother's Day or a Father's Day or a Christmas or an Easter or a holiday season or a child's birthday. I mean, you just hit so many moments where it feels like it's another punch, a punch of rejection, a punch of misunderstanding, a punch of, you know, belittling, a punch of, and you seem to never actually come into a place where you get a space to regroup in all of that. Can I say that sometimes you do need to just have moments apart? But actually, if you can get in your mind to a place, even if it's literally only 2 or 3 things that you find to be grateful for in them, you will actually help yourself break that cycle. I'm grateful that God did not choose the wrong family for me to be, if that's all you can say. God, you never do anything wrong. So you must understand, you know, that I must understand that you put me in the right place. Whew, I'm grateful for that. Let's just start there.
Play the glad game.
Play the glad game. Yes. And then actually you're going to back yourself off from consistent conflict.
That's it. It's taking yourself out.
Now, does that mean they get everything right? No. Does it mean you get everything right? No. But it's that sense of I'm going to, as you say, play the glad game. I'm going to find I'm just going to find 1 or 2 things. I'm just going to find 1 or 2 things that I can say to celebrate about you. And actually may need to verbalize it.
Because we'll lose the good.
Yes.
And I think that's where the enemy can really rob us. Because we can get so caught up in the what's not working and what is hard, that actually in the middle of that there is so much good that we will lose and that we won't grow fruit from in our own lives.
Yes. Now I'm going to come to you for top tips for navigating your parents. And pray our parents don't always watch this. Top tips for navigating our parents. In all of the midst of this. I think that communication of I love you. You don't need to say, but I don't like you. Leave that. I love you, and here is how I want us to try this Christmas. We will do this day, this day, and then maybe this day you can come for 2 hours. But at least that there is an understanding of when you are giving access, that it's not that it has to be one forcing it and the other. Have the honest conversations and the boundary conversations so that the two adults, parent, child, know when they're going to be together. Keep it, if the relationships are very stressful, keep it short and keep it neutral.
Yeah. And I think that's so freeing. So I don't have a particularly great relationship with my dad. I'm happy to own that. And so my brother and I, navigating Christmases and things, initially we're like, well, we want to love him well and we want to honor him well because you were raised with that. But we've realized it is liberating to say that distance is honoring and boundaries are honoring. And so, for instance, this last Christmas I flew home to the States and we set very specific dates and times that he could be with us, and it made it work and it made it easier, and actually it made it a lot more fun rather than the stress of it being open-ended. And so I think especially when you are talking about parents where it's challenging, where there's high trauma, maybe even abuse in some instances, it is honoring to set boundaries, because you have to honor yourself and what you're capable of holding and what you're capable of being around in proximity. And I think for me that's been the most liberating, is honor can be distance, and that includes emotional distance. So if I need to create emotional boundaries by time sensitive boundaries, that's still honoring of my parent, because it means then I can say, I was really glad I saw him at Christmas this year, rather than creating a situation without the boundaries where I leave thinking that was really messy, that was really awkward, that was really painful.
Because you felt that you were empowered to choose what honor looked like, and chose the day, the time, the space, and therefore you didn't feel emotionally robbed or punched. And actually you're back here in Scotland saying, I'm glad.
Yeah. And I think that was, at least for me, mine's is a messy situation. My parents are divorced, but it also then that honored my mum, because then she's like, okay, if those are the dates that your dad's coming, then I'm going to choose to be somewhere else. So that honored her, and that also empowered her. And so it is tricky as adults, when your parents are separated and when there's messiness in the background from things in your childhood. But I think, and I loved what you said about honor not being the same as respect. And I think for me as well, honor doesn't also mean I trust. And I know that sounds really harsh, but I think we have to acknowledge that. Do you know what I mean? I can honor my dad, but I don't know that I would say that I necessarily trust him. And so in order to stay into a place of honor with him, I have to set boundaries.
Yeah.
Because he's broken that trust. So I think that's the messiness of adult life, is I want to love my dad. I really want to love my dad.
Yeah.
Because I have the love of Christ in me for him. But that sometimes means it's very boundaried and it's very regimented how we interact and how we engage. And so it's, allowing for that to be permissible. But I think in Christianity and church, you were just left with honor your parents, but never taught what that looked like. And I felt a lot of shame in my
powerless.
I felt powerless, and I felt a lot of shame in my early adult life, because I thought that means he still has to be in my life. That means he still has to have a voice or a space, but actually it doesn't. It means honor for me is I have to have high distance, both physically and emotionally from him, so that I can love him.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting that we just, we read those 10 commandments, but without the definitions that we're layering onto it today, where we are biblically robust and we want to be biblically literate, but actually there's the permission of what that looks like. It's not respect, it's not trust, it's not proximity, and it's something of healthy communication then that gives space, or that you may not say that, or we will not talk about that. And you know that you then choose not to goad them. Really, really.
Yeah, that's huge.
Really, really important. It's interesting. I have a slightly different story in that the relationship with David's mum and dad and my dad, because they're the three that are alive, is phenomenally awesome. And the question of what has made that awesome. I don't know that I have really ever heard my dad or David's mum and dad, and they both live 3 minutes from the house. So we're all like layered. on top of each other. I don't think I have ever heard any of them comment on anything I've done parentally, ever, or comment on some of our decision making. I don't think I've ever. I don't think they ever have.
Yeah.
And so I can completely open my home because I'm not being critiqued by them.
They just show up how they feel they need to show up, but don't critique what you do.
That's amazing.
It is utterly remarkable, and I think I kind of want to figure out how I model that, where there is no critique. But what that means is that I have sat with them, particularly my dad, who you guys will watch my dad because he preaches away and on our platform. I'm then free to say to him, what do you think about this situation? What do you think about from the silly things like what do you think about how I preached? Was it theologically, and he'll comment on that, to the much more personal things of what do you think about how we're handling that situation with this child in this situation, but how disciplined they must have been to withhold all opinion, which took us into the place where I can now ask for that, because I can then ask for it at a point where I feel able to take the sharpening, and I see the value of the sharpening. But my goodness, it's utterly remarkable.
Absolutely.
It is utterly remarkable.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'm going to be able. I don't know that I'm going to be able to be that.
It is. I know. It is.
But that's the
I don't even think I am that.
Please do. Please learn it.
Please learn it.
Please learn it.
I know.
But I think that's what happens, isn't it? Is that when you become an adult, it's almost like you have to re-invite your parents back into your life.
Yeah, that's true.
And so for my mum, she's very opinionated in things, but she saw, because my grandmother was very critical and very opinionated and nosy in, and that created a lot of issues. So she made a conscious choice, that is not how I will be with my children. But she had to navigate, and we've had to have hard conversations of, Katrina, I really wish you told me that first. I'm like, yes, but Mom, I'm like, in my late 20s, like, I don't have to tell you that.
Yes.
And she's like, right, okay. But because we've had that conversation, now she understands the privilege, I suppose, of being re-invited back in. Like, I don't know, that's weird. And maybe it's the singleness as well, where you have that dynamic with your parents still. But I think that's part of what you have to navigate in going from being a very highly dependent child to suddenly your own person is, I have an option to re-invite you back into my life. And I think you bear the fruit of I think parents bear the fruit of how they were and the young years and the teen years, and how an adult chooses to let them back in. So even what we were talking about in the previous episode, if you model trust, if you model attunement, you will bear the fruit then in your adult relationship with your children, because they'll choose to let you back in when they don't necessarily have to choose to let you back in anymore.
I'm raised by quite a nosy prophet, and
naming no names.
I'm raised by quite a nosy prophet.
You mean a knowing prophet?
Knowing prophet. Thank you, Alan.
Sorry, it was the dyslexia. No, it was. But I know and I trust that everything she asked me about, or I've had it before. It's like, when did you kiss this person?
Well, you see, the problem is in your world, and I do know it's a problem. Sometimes God does tell me things, because He and I are tight. So I get on the phone and I'm like, God's just told me that you've kissed somebody.
God's told you a lot of things, but in my heart, I had to come to a place of, okay, God, I trust you. And I know that you've only told her things, that she needs to know. And I trust that God has only put for her and in conversation things that I know she needs to know.
That's very mature of you.
Thank you.
Because I have been on the phone going, Jessica, God's just told me something. You need to talk to me right now.
Like, you didn't need to word it like that, but okay. But I've had to come to that place where I know I trust my Father in heaven enough to understand that if you're going to open stuff up about that, then I know that's probably something I need to talk to you about.
Yeah.
And everything else I can come to in my own time as an adult and be like, this is what I need to tell you.
Yeah.
And I think we've built up, and again, it comes back, like we were talking with teenagers, it starts completely from ground zero and leveling the trust throughout the years to be able to get to a place where you don't continually feel the need to nudge me for answers or what's going on in your life. I just will come to you with, this is going on.
Yeah. This is a very honest story, and I have asked Jessica permission to tell this story about your flat, your dodgy flatmate. This is a tough one for any parent. So Jessica moves out, first year fine, university set where she lived. Second year, she chose her housemates. They're not Christian, any of them. Fine, I'm just coping with that. And some girls, some boys, all in this big shared student flat. I'm thinking, something's not right, something's not right, something's not right. I can feel something's not right. Jessica, something's not right.
I called you.
Oh, did you call me for that one? That kind of said, something's not right.
Because we have trust. I called you.
Something's not right. This is shocking. This is shocking. And actually, when I told your grandparents, I mean, I've rarely seen grandparents as unable to contain themselves as your daddy and I were. One of your flatmates got very drunk.
Two of them.
Forced themselves into your bedroom and tried to force themselves on top of you, blind drunk. It was horrific, wasn't it? You okay if I continue?
No, you can continue.
Mercifully, because they were so drunk, you were able to push them off. Mercifully. And get them out of your room and barricade yourself in. It was a hellish night of abuse and attack. But you live with them.
Yeah.
They then pretend they can't remember what's going on, and then
spread rumours
to cover their own backs about your purity. Daddy and I are like, get her out, pay 2 rents, it doesn't matter, just find her somewhere else to live. Your granddad, your grandpa is like, I'm over in the car, I'm putting a lock on the inside of your room, you're traumatized, we're traumatized, it's a horrendous thing. I'm writing letters in my head to your landlord to get us out of the contract because you've been assaulted in your own flat by your own flatmates.
I chose to stay, and there are many reasons for why I chose to stay. I wanted to finish it, all this sort of stuff. But I remember having the conversation. I had options to get out.
I had to sit on my opinion. Your daddy did, your 3 grandparents did. We had to sit on the opinion and not say, right. I mean, daddy was nearly over there packing your bag and marching you out.
I had this other single Christian girl that was struggling, and she was like, come, you can move out. And I met up with her, I did the whole thing, I'd kind of geared myself, but something was not sitting right with me. And I was like, I know everyone's telling me I need out, but I have to admit, I feel like I should stay. And my whole life, I know I've like supposed to be the salt and light thing. And I was like, God, this is quite an intense salt and light thing. Maybe I can get out. But actually, I was like, no, I want to finish this to the end of the tenancy, and I want to make right these relationships before I leave. And I called you. I was like, I'm going to stay.
There was a whole set of conversations where I am literally physically biting my tongue to not tell her what to do, or funding what she should do.
And you gave me amazing grace to be able to, you were like, there was definitely get out, Jessica, but at the same time there was, you decide, because I know you're wrestling with something here. And I chose to stay, and actually, by the grace of God, I did manage to repair some of the relationships and leave civilly.
Not that you had broken them, they had broken them.
But kind of leave civil, finish my tenancy. There was no mess or complications. And this year I'm moving into a fabulous flat with fabulous people, all different, not the same people.
Not at all.
But I think that for you, I can't imagine,
your determination that you would be salt and lightness a witness and forgive and say, some of the Christian conversations you then had about Jesus in the middle of all of that flat astounded me.
I knew there was something that had to come. It hadn't come yet, and I hadn't been enough salt. And I was like, I'm not done here. Don't let me move out. And
despite their behaviour.
Yeah.
And I think it's like, just as I'm listening to that, you guys are having conversations.
Yes.
So like often we think communication is the exact same thing as conversation. And although we communicate when we converse, you weren't just giving an opinion and talking at each other. There's like an opting in together to communicate and to have conversations. And I think to be heard. And so I think like that's what my top tip on parents, like communicating with your parents is. It's like me and my mum have both had to kind of say, okay, we're not going to talk at each other. We're going to have conversations, and we both have to meet somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
And
do you set that up with your mum in terms of, Mum, we are going to have a conversation, can we meet in the middle? I mean, is it as blunt as that?
It's not as blunt as that, but we've had many conversations where we've both miscommunicated or been misheard. And so out of those moments, we're like, okay, something, there has to be a softness in and around this. And so now I realise that when we're communicating, we're not just communicating, we're now both at a place where we're having conversation. And it's really helped just the dynamic of our relationship.
See, there's a prayer, isn't it, to pray, give this adult relationship the ability to have conversations, not just communication.
Yes.
Exactly.
In other words, not just stating my side.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Debs, when our time is nearly gone, any other top tips?
No, I think that's great, and just not to be discouraged, like you say, when it isn't like that.
Yeah.
Because it's not everybody's gift. That gift that, like, even having a nosy prophet mother, what a gift!
I know.
Like, what a gift!
Knowing, I thought we said it was knowing prophet mother.
Like, I was
not
like,
nosy.
what a gift! Just what a gift! And it's knowing that what you were saying about that I'm not powerless. And just feeling empowered to make the decision with the Lord that is right for you and your situation and your relationships at the time, and just asking his blessing on all of it, and just honouring as best you can. And sometimes that doesn't look to the other side receiving it as blessing and honour. But nonetheless, these are things that we do to navigate relationships, and navigate is the word I'm choosing because it's not a straight road.
No. It's not a straight road.
No.
Just as I talk straight to you, and as we come to the end of this session, there are some times where your boxing ring relationships will be so horrific, like the boxing ring has got knives at the end of the boxing gloves, that it's actually very damaging and it rips you. I think there is permission to step out of the boxing ring. And there are sometimes you have to break soul ties, and you do have to break connections. We dealt with a number of people over the years where it's fairly extreme like that. We then jump into the scriptures where God puts the lonely in families. Brilliant, brilliant inclusiveness of God. And that when we talk about ourselves as the army of God, that brings a certain imagery. But I think when we talk about God calling us a family, or God calling us the body of Christ, let's lean for a moment into that imagery of being families of families. That it is beholden, particularly whenever we come to people like Katrina, who you're not married, you don't have children, your family is actually across the globe in another continent, not just another nation, another continent. That I think it is quite useful to find a set of relationships where you actually say, can we become family? You have that with a couple of friends, don't you?
I do.
Here. Can we become family? Can we use that terminology around each other? Can we adopt one another? Because there is a loneliness, and you do want us to be a family of families, and then actually a family of nations, ultimately, as we see in Genesis 10. But that sense of asking people to become your family and you to become their family, and then asking what are our birthday traditions or our Christmas traditions or our Easter traditions, so that if your biological family is an absolute basket case of daggers at dawn, I want to bless you to push with God so that you are always in a family, because God's best is that you are in a family. And I think it is then beholden on us that we who do have biological working families, I don't know whether we grew up in manses, but my father would always bring round to the house on Christmas those who had nowhere else to go.
Oh, my mum still does it.
Oh my. I mean, there's some high days in that, and there's some pretty low moments. I remember having somebody who came and spent we have a yucca plant, spent the whole time just talking to a yucca plant. Anyway, that's best left unsaid. Now it's been said. But anyway, that sense of, we bless you to find what honor looks like, and we bless you to find a family that is not necessarily blood, but is certainly of the kingdom of God, and that you get proactive about, God, can you put me in a family, and can I maybe become the curator of that family, if that's not instinctive in somebody else's heart, that you actually go after that you get people who stick to you like a fly sticks to glue.
We all have a few of those, yes.
Yes, like a fly sticks to glue.
Yeah.
We actually do. You would do if you. Yes, brilliant. Well, thank you for listening to another deep, meaningful, and honest on our part episode of At the Stark's Table with the gorgeous gaggle of girls. What's 5?
I don't know.
Quit. Not a quad. No. Oh no, we don't know. The guys behind the camera have got their head in their hands. Shout over. What is 5? A quintet. A quintet. Thank you, sign guys. I'm getting the thumbs up. Joining this quintet of girls. I can't think of another quintet of queens. That's a whole different conversation. Let's stop there, and we'll see you next episode of At the Stark's Table.